One thing that is important for patients is to feel that they're actually part of society, and reasons that I've mentioned before can show this can be very difficult. It's what's known as social inclusion, where patients can still feel part of everyday life. What I'd like to mention to you is quite a few areas that I would consider actual barriers to social inclusion, things that will stop a patient being able to participate in everyday life. One of the first things is to do with work and employment. It's very difficult if you're on any type of extended sick leave. For me personally, I've often had to take quite long breaks from work. Sometimes I haven't been able to return to work at all because of my health. Other times I've gone back but found it very difficult. I mean, for example, I was trying to go for a promotion once. During this time I was mentoring new staff. I was doing really well in work and enjoying it, but after being off sick for a long time, I came back and so much had changed. In fact, the person that I'd been training to do the job was actually now my manager. So things like this are very difficult, and again, emotionally and psychologically very difficult when, like everyone, you're trying to move forward with your life. So that can then make it difficult. Also, you'll have missed so much. You're not up to date. Training opportunities, various courses that we all have to go on. You're not up to date with practice and what's being used. So, you are behind. You're like a new starter again. And when you've been doing a certain job for, some length of time, it's very disheartening to be placed in that situation. I think another thing to do with work, and it's not very nice for me to have to say this, because there's so many policies and laws now to protect people that are ill or with disabilities in terms of discrimination. However, I found on several occasions I was discriminated against, and often it's not done in black and white. It's how you're treated by your colleagues. I mean, the types of things I mean were, for example, I was quite sick at the time with nausea and vomiting. I was taking odd days off because I didn't know from one day to the next if I was going to be ill. So yeah, it is very frustrating, but for me as well, that I didn't know from one day to the next if I was going to be well or able to go into work. Now, on top of this pressure of feeling so ill and having to ring in, and being a very conscientious person, I was unaware that I was being labelled a skiver. I was labelled all sorts, lazy, unpredictable, unreliable, all the sorts of things that a conscientious person doesn't want. And again, this was just due to my health. And again, something that I think can be quite common, particularly with head injury and brain conditions, is at times that I was actually accused of coming in drunk or being on drugs because of lack of coordination, problems with my balance. So on top of anything else, apart from the illness, you're seen as lazy, work shy, on drugs, drink, whatever, you name it. And sadly, this did actually happen. There was also a pressure in one job to do the job that I was there for, and despite people saying, oh, jobs can be adapted, I was actually given jobs that I'd explained I couldn't do, quite physical jobs. I think to sort of prove that I wasn't capable of doing the job, and it was a terrible situation to be in. And it's something that everyone says, that's shocking, that's not legal. But believe me, I went to unions, I talked to a lot of people. This actually happened. And because of the stress, because of the pressure, everything, I mean, I fought as much as I could, for my rights, but it's really hard work. And sadly, when people think, oh, ill people aren't discriminated against, they'll be helped in their job, they'll be helped back to work. Ideally, yes, but in reality, that's not always the case. The other thing as well, obviously related to employment really, is the knock-on effect of your finances. If you're not working, then obviously you've got less income, or if you're in a restricted job, it's very hard then to have the income. Now obviously a lack of finances will then limit what you can do in all aspects of life, particularly socially. I think when you're working, it's quite easy to say, oh yeah, we'll go for a meal, we'll go for a night out. When you've got less money, these things can be very expensive. And I think at the moment people are very aware generally of limitations with finances, but this does happen when you're not working, and it's very difficult. The other thing as well, it's a bit of a catch-22, and I've been in this situation a few times. When you've been off work and limited finances and then want to go back to work, it's quite expensive. And what I mean by that is, to start with, you have to have work clothes, depending on your job or whatever. But it costs quite a lot of money to then go out and often get new clothes for work. And then there's all your travel expenses, all these sorts of things that you tend to take for granted when you're doing it week in, week out. But this is something that has to be considered. So all this is impacted on with lack of finances. The other thing as well that can constrict people in society is basic mobility issues, transport issues. Now I know that a lot is done to try and help people in terms of benefits and things, but again, I always seem to find the catch-22. My situation is I do drive, but obviously when I'm ill I can't drive. So what I do is I put money that I get for mobility help towards a car. So each month my money goes towards paying for a car. So when I can't drive that car, the car still has to be paid for. So it doesn't mean I can put the car in the garage and then use that money to go and for taxis and whatever, because the money's already been spent. And this is just one of the, it's unfortunate, but this is what happens if I can't get public transport, because that is a big problem. Again, public transport, you can sometimes have quite a walk. Where I live, to get a train, there's a massive flight of stairs, and I think the only way around that is a huge detour around somewhere. But I mean, actually being on the train is no problem. Getting to the train, getting onto the platform, is quite a job in itself. Often train stations, as you'll know, have huge escalators. Some don't have lifts. I can't actually travel down an escalator because of my balance. This all sounds very negative, but this is the reality of what you're trying to deal with. So and getting on buses, and again, people that use buses will know, and it's not funny, it's really dangerous, but often you get on a bus, and I always think it's terrible, because as well as disabled people, you're having elderly people use buses a lot, mothers with young children and prams. But when you get on them, nobody actually waits for you to sit down, and the bus tends to take off. And this happened to me once. I thought, well, I'll use a bus. But I had I was very wobbly on my feet. I was trying to hold on. This bus takes off, and of course I went flying and broke my arm. Now, on top of having an illness and recovering from an illness, the last thing any patient wants is a broken arm on top of it, because then you're even more restricted. But sadly, this is what happens. And there's so many restrictions on just getting out and about. It sounds a lot easier than it is, and but I'm only telling you from my own personal situation that it can be a lot more limited than you might think. I think the other thing, and this comes into it a lot, as I mentioned before, is your social life. When you're not well, as we all know, whether it's the flu or then a long-term illness, often we have to cancel invitations or to go out places, and this can be because of your health, because of your finances, or maybe because of actually getting there. Another thing that something that I think people don't always realise is when you've been ill, and again from my experience, I've often been on a lot of drugs, and my body shape can change a lot. In fact, I was on steroids at one point, and I put on a huge amount of weight, and none of my clothes would fit me. And then other times when you're not well, you might lose weight, and so physically you change in shape quite a lot. So often you can't get into your clothes. Now, bearing in mind you haven't got the money for new clothes and you can't get out to buy new clothes, it's very, very difficult. And so often it's easy just to say I'm not bothering going out, because it's such hard work just to you know, to get out into society because of these things. And you do feel it does affect your self-esteem. I mean, I know apart from your clothes and things, when you know, I've been really ill, and you know, you don't look right. I mean, for me, and you know, for a lot of women, things like dyeing your hair is a really big thing, because it's all part of your self-confidence. Now for me, when I've had surgery, I can't dye my hair for ages. And okay, it's not life-threatening, but as a lot of women will appreciate, it's like putting on your makeup. You feel a bit better when you feel you look a bit better. And so, you know, you don't feel as good about yourself going out. And also, I mean, I use a stick on occasion, and this can sometimes, I mean, I've sort of got used to it now, but often people can feel very self-conscious. You don't feel like, not that I am young and trendy anymore, sadly, but you don't feel, you know, at your best when you've got a walking stick. So things like that, you know, can be very difficult and restrictive. The other thing as well is generally about public places, and I've only noticed this when I've been ill, and I think it's like a lot of things, it's only when you're in that position that you realise how difficult it can be to get to public places. One main area that I found, it's going to the pictures. Now, going to the pictures is actually something technically I can do very easily. I don't have to be physically fit, you would think, to go and watch a film. But again, I think you may all be aware, if you go into pictures, first of all, they're dangerously dark. They don't have the ushers with the torches anymore, so you're walking into a dark place, which is very difficult when you've got balance issues. There's also a lot of stairs, and there are no railings. Now, I physically can't walk down a set of stairs without something to just hold on to. So I couldn't possibly go on my own, and if I go with somebody, I have to, you know, use their arm to lean on to walk down. But you know, this isn't catered for. So in that respect, although it seems like a very simple thing to do, go into the pictures, if I'm on my own, I can't go. It's as simple as that. Another thing that I found very difficult was one thing I can do again is swimming, and I love swimming, and it was recommended to me by therapists, occupational therapists, physios. Swimming's good, and I'm like, great, I love swimming, and once I'm in the water, absolutely fine. It's good for my balance, good for everything, really enjoy it. The problem is getting into the pool and getting into the pool, because first of all, like I was saying before about transport, where I live, it's too far to walk to get to a pool. I would either have to pay for a taxi if I can't drive, which I couldn't afford because I'm paying for my car, go on a bus, which is too risky and dangerous, and so basically I can't get to the pool. The other thing is, once I got there, it's getting from the changing rooms into the water. Now, I think everyone's aware that pools are generally pretty slippy places, water everywhere, goes with the territory. But when you've got a balance problem on top of this, it's really scary. And I just think, you know, one slip and I can't correct my balance, I'll do myself and break something else, you know, so it's not worth the risk.